My boyfriend took his own life after I cheated on him and left him, following advice from my therapist. I'm writing this to share my story over the past year. It took a lot of edits and rewrites to make it make sense. I used to be a decent writer, but I've fallen out of practice. A friend recommended I share this here as a way to confess, make amends, and warn others. I did something terrible, and the consequences were worse than anything I could have imagined. I know many people will judge me harshly for my actions, and I don't blame them. Even reading my own words makes me feel sick because I know what I did was wrong. My hope is that by sharing my story, it might prevent someone else from making the same mistakes, especially if they're thinking about cheating. Some might think that my situation is rare, but I've been told by people more knowledgeable than me that it happens more often than we think. I'm willing to face the criticism if it means it could stop just one person from breaking someone's heart like I did. I'm 28, and I was married to a wonderful man I'll call William. 8 months ago, he confronted me with proof of my infidelity. A few days later, he took his life. I know many reading this will hate me, and I understand. I never thought I was capable of causing someone that much pain, but I did. If you had asked either of us if we'd ever be unfaithful, we would have laughed. But I lost my way and betrayed him, even though I knew it would hurt him deeply. I broke his heart so completely that he couldn't bear the pain anymore. And if you think I don't deserve to live, I agree with you. I've tried to end my own life twice, but for some reason, I'm still here. I've convinced myself that staying alive means suffering, and that's what I deserve. William and I grew up together. I can't remember a time when he wasn't in my life. We went to the same schools, and our families were friends. He always made me laugh. I realized I liked him in 6th grade, and we officially started dating in high school. We were each other's first loves and went to college together. After college, we got good jobs and got married. We had a great relationship. We took trips together and made each other laugh. We were even planning to have kids. We had names picked out. We were each other's firsts for everything. But I threw all of that away for something cheap and meaningless. Instead of a random mistake, I got emotionally and physically involved with a man who wasn't nearly as good as my husband. I didn't think a simple friendship with another man could become more. Our marriage was strong, but I learned the hard way that no relationship is invincible. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't wish I could go back and change things. I know the world would be better if William was still here instead of me. I had so many chances to stop before things went too far, but I didn't. After our argument, William left, and I never spoke to him again. I tried to reach out to apologize, but he never responded. Everyone told me to give him time, but 2 nights after he confronted me, there was a knock at my door. When I saw 2 policemen, I knew why they were there. They told me William was gone. I collapsed, screaming and crying. I couldn't go to his funeral, even if his family had allowed me. I was kept sedated for days. When I got out, I wanted to visit his grave, but no one would tell me where he was buried. I tried to end my life again that night. I'm not asking for pity because I don't deserve it. Nothing can take away this pain. Part of me wishes I had forced him to see me just one more time so I could apologize, but I know that might have made things worse. Many people blame me for what happened, and I don't doubt that they're right. Until that day, we had been so happy. He didn't leave a note, but we went from bliss to heartbreak so quickly. And I know that I am responsible for that change. My actions betrayed both of us. Regret doesn't kill you if it did. I would have died before he confronted me. During the pandemic, we quarantined together and became even closer. We made the most of it, watching movies, cooking, and laughing together. It felt like we were the only 2 people in the world. I know how awful the pandemic was for so many, and I'm sorry for those who suffered. But for us, it was a time of love and joy. And then I ruined it all with my betrayal. I cheated on him with a man I'll call Paul, who I met during work meetings on Zoom. At first, I didn't like Paul at all, and he didn't seem interested in me either. He was engaged, and I was happily married. But over time, we started talking more, and eventually, things went too far. Our school started doing hybrid classes, and Paul and I saw each other more often. He asked me to edit his wedding speech, which seemed innocent at the time. I didn't think I needed to mention it to William. But as the months went by, Paul and I started exchanging more messages, and eventually, the nature of our relationship changed. What began as simple conversations turned into something much worse, and I crossed a line I never thought I would. And now I live with the consequences of that mistake every single day. Not once did things between us become flirty or sexual. Yes, we talked about sex, but only from a scientific and psychological perspective. Our conversations about sex would have bored even the most passionate person. There was nothing emotional or stimulating about them. I enjoyed our talks because I was sure neither of us felt any temptation. We discussed all sorts of topics, including race, politics, religion, science, and sports, subjects people usually avoid because of differing opinions. Some of our discussions got intense, and I was called uptight a few times because of my views on sex. I proved him wrong, but I wished he had been right. All of this happened during work hours. My husband and I had a landline for emergencies, but once we got home, our smartphones were turned off. Paul didn't even have my number until I sent him a message late one day that made him ask for it so he could respond. I didn't think much of it since many other coworkers had my email. I also didn't think Paul had any romantic interest in me. He was very focused on his fiancée. But about a month before their wedding, he found out that she had been having an affair with her high school boyfriend for over a year. He was shocked and deeply hurt by the situation. I became the person he vented to. I don't know when our conversations crossed a line, but I started to genuinely feel sorry for Paul. I was angry at his fiancée for what she did, and I thought there was nothing wrong with that. One day, after a rough night, he came to work looking upset, and I could tell he had been crying. I hugged him and listened to him for a while. He asked if I could stay after school to talk, and since I had some time before my husband got home, I agreed. Looking back, I realized that what drew me to my conversations with Paul was the new perspective. My husband and I had talked about almost everything, and I could always predict what he would say. I think I craved something different, even if it meant conflict. It was foolish, but that's what eventually led to the affair. Things with my husband were good, and we spent all our free time together. I had mentioned Paul to him before, but since nothing was going on, I didn't go into details, and my husband didn't think to ask more. When Paul started dating someone new, I felt happy for him, not jealous. But when my husband had to go out of town for work for 3 weeks, I missed him a lot, even though we spoke daily. With the extra time on my hands, I found myself texting Paul more often. Instead of just talking after school, Paul and I sometimes went out for a meal or a drink before going home. The first time things turned physical was an accident. I sprained my ankle, and since the school nurse was unavailable, I went to Paul, thinking he might have some first aid supplies. As he was helping with my ankle, I noticed he was aroused. It caught me off guard until I realized he could see up my skirt. I have to admit, for a moment, I found it flattering. I adjusted my position slightly, and he called me out on it. I laughed it off and suggested he take out his frustration on his girlfriend. Then he kissed me. I pushed him away, but when he kissed me again, I didn't resist. We made out for a bit before I came to my senses and quickly left. I sat in my classroom, shocked by what had happened. I hadn't planned it, and I didn't think Paul had either. I didn't know if I should tell my husband right away or wait until he returned home. When I talked to Paul after classes, he apologized and told me not to let this ruin my marriage. I decided not to tell my husband while he was away to avoid adding to his stress. After our call that night, I thought it best to wait until he was back. But then, his work trip got extended by 2 more weeks, and I found myself confiding in Paul about what had happened between us. I couldn't talk to my friends or family because they all loved my husband. So I ended up sharing my feelings with Paul, something I knew was wrong. One Friday after work, Paul and I went out for dinner and drinks. I told him how anxious I felt about confessing to my husband. He asked how I thought my husband would react, and I joked that Paul might want to take the next day off, just in case. Paul asked if I thought my husband would hurt him, and I told him no, but that it would definitely mean the end of our friendship. Paul admitted that he might not have made it through his breakup without my support, and I assured him that I was glad to help. The realization that our friendship would soon end made us both sad, and after having too many drinks, I ended up at Paul's apartment, where things went further than they ever should have. As soon as it happened, I was filled with regret. I knew without a doubt that my marriage was over. My husband and I had always believed that while people make mistakes, someone who cheats doesn't deserve a second chance with the person they betrayed. They might find love again, but not with the partner they hurt. Things got complicated when my husband came back from his trip. I was on my period, so there was no intimacy between us, which was a small relief. I wouldn't have been able to face him otherwise. I wrote a letter to him, planning to confess everything, but I wanted to tell him face to face first. To this day, I don't know how my husband found out before I had the chance to confess. He might have been monitoring my messages with Paul all along. When I realized he knew, it crushed me. I never got to ask him how he discovered my betrayal. I had plans to tell him the truth, but I never got the chance. William didn't believe me when things finally came to light. And honestly, I wouldn't have believed myself either if I were in his shoes. He had found a stack of printed texts between Paul and me, clear evidence of my betrayal. I didn't try to deny what he accused me of, but my honesty came far too late to change anything. By then, the damage was already done. William didn't react in anger. He didn't shout or demand explanations. Instead, he packed a few belongings into a suitcase, taking only what he needed. He left me that Monday evening without looking back. I watched him walk out the door, feeling a strange emptiness settle in the room that used to feel so warm and full of love. That emptiness only grew when, on Wednesday night, I got the call no one ever wants to receive. William had driven to a nearby shopping center, parked his car, and taken his own life. The realization that I was responsible for ending our relationship shattered me in ways I can hardly describe. It felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, a pain that refused to go away. But the worst part wasn't just knowing that I had destroyed what we had. It was realizing that I had taken away his chance to find happiness with someone else. I had robbed him of a future, a chance to heal, and maybe find someone who could have brought joy back into his life. That thought has haunted me every day since it happened. I wasn't just ending my relationship with William when I made those choices. I was taking away every relationship he could have had after me. That guilt sits in my heart like a permanent scar, something I can't erase, no matter how much time passes or how much I wish I could change the past. A lot has happened since William's death, but sharing all the details wouldn't really make a difference to most people. What matters is that his family hates me, and they have every right to feel that way. They see me as the person who hurt their son, and I can't argue with that. My own family is disgusted with my actions, too. Their love for me hasn't disappeared, but the disappointment and shame they feel towards me will never go away. And to be honest, I think that's how it should be. Some mistakes are so big that they leave marks that never fade. No, I didn't mean for things to end like this. I never wanted anyone to be hurt, let alone for it to end in such a tragic way. But intentions don't change the outcomes. When our actions cause pain and suffering to others, we are still responsible for that pain, no matter what we intended. That's a truth I have to live with every single day. To try and make sense of all this, I started seeing a therapist twice a week. I knew I couldn't navigate this alone, and I needed help to sort through the mess of emotions inside me. Through my therapist, I met someone else who has a similar story. Years ago, she set a small fire as a joke to scare her ex-boyfriend and the new girl he was seeing. But the fire spread faster than she expected, and what she meant to be a harmless prank ended up taking several lives. It was a tragedy she never intended, just like what happened to me. She and I have talked a lot about our stories. We share our regrets, our mistakes, and the heavy guilt we both carry. Talking with her has made me realize that life will never be like it used to be, and maybe that's for the best. But if I'm going to keep living, I need to find a way to make whatever time I have left meaningful. I have to try to make up for what I've done, even if I know I can never fully repair the damage. This is my story, and I know it's a difficult one to hear. If anyone reading this feels the need to leave hateful comments, calling me a terrible person, I understand. I won't be responding to those messages, but if it helps you get rid of any anger or frustration, then use me as your target. I won't fight back because I know I deserve it. For those with specific questions, I will do my best to answer honestly, even if it hurts to relive some of the moments. It's the least I can do after everything that's happened. This story isn't just about what I did. It's about the pain I caused, the lives that were changed, and the consequences that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. To those who have been cheated on, I know my story might sound familiar to some of you. Many of you have been intentionally betrayed by someone you trusted. But there are others out there whose partner might be just as confused about why they cheated as you are. Maybe, like me, they didn't fully understand their own actions until it was too late. None of this makes what I did right, far from it. But if sharing my story helps you realize that you didn't do anything to cause the betrayal, I hope it brings you some comfort. For those who are unrepentant about cheating, I hope you read my story as a warning. Your actions have the power to destroy more than just a relationship. They can devastate lives, not only of the person you betrayed, but also of many others. You'll hurt friends, family, and even yourself in ways you can't imagine. I know I'm in no place to preach or judge anyone, but if my story can prevent someone else from making the same mistakes, then sharing it will have been worth it. And for those who have a loving, happy relationship, I urge you to cherish it. Don't take your partner for granted. Remember that no one is immune to making bad choices under the wrong circumstances. When we love someone, we carry a piece of their heart with us, and they carry a piece of ours. But one act of betrayal can shatter that bond forever. I held William's heart in my hands, and I have to accept that I will never hold it again. He will never hold mine either, and that's a loss I have to live with. Life is already filled with so much pain and difficulty. We don't need to add to that by hurting the people we love. Love is something too precious, too rare to throw away over a moment's bad decision. I didn't realize that in time, but maybe you can. To sum it all up, I cheated, and my actions led to my husband's death just a few days after he confronted me. This post is my final update. Some people have asked if William made a certain Reddit post, but he never used Reddit. And considering he's been gone for a year, it couldn't have been him. It's a sad story, and I hope that the original poster didn't end up taking their own life. For those trying to understand my actions, even professionals haven't found a clear reason for why I did what I did. I wish I could find a reason too, but even if I could, it wouldn't make what I did any less wrong. Some people think this story is fake, and I can't understand why anyone would believe that. This wasn't written for sympathy or attention. It's not easy to admit to something so horrible. I've barely responded to comments, and sharing this hasn't made me feel better. It's just a way to warn others and, hopefully, help someone avoid making the same mistakes I did. I don't keep in touch with Paul anymore. I haven't heard from him since before William passed away, and I have no interest in having him in my life. Those who think I planned this to run off with him have got it all wrong. That's not my intention, and it never was. I'll leave this post up in case it helps someone who might need to read it. Thank you to those who took the time to listen, and may you all live lives filled with happiness. But more than anything, I wish you peace.